Okay. Well, once again, thank you so much for everyone who has joined us this morning for the Speech Analytics and Quality Management webinar. Um, I'd like to thank Creavai, so Greg and Jack, for joining us this morning. They are a fantastic partner of ours and bring a huge amount of value to our portfolio of products and services. For those who don't know NSL and haven't worked with us in the past, we are an aggregator of services. So we don't develop or build anything ourselves. We bring in fantastic partners like Creavai, 8x8, Verint, PCI Pal, and we support and deploy those products and services for our customers. We've been in the telecoms industry for just over 25 years, and our focus is providing a consultative approach for our customers and giving them the best support and guidance whilst they're managing their customers' interactions. So as I say, we've got another webinar coming up next month, which is on the 19th of February, and that's based around the 8x8 platform and multi-channels. And what's really, really interesting is looking at the various age demographics of Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, boomers, and older than that, and how they like to be communicated with, and how they like to communicate with their suppliers. And what's really interesting is Creavai and their tools can analyze all of those different channels and bring that business information forward and allow our customers to be more efficient in what they're doing. So I think I've stolen a little bit of Greg's thunder there, but what I'm going to do is hand over to Greg first, who is going to tell you a little bit about Creavai, and then he's going to hand over to Jack after that, who's going to move forward with the presentation. So over to you, please, Greg.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mark. Yes, you always start to steal some of the intro, and then but then step back from the breach. So all good. It's great to be back. So we've dived into a few of these sessions with NSL over the last few months. That back worth saying that back catalogue is available as well, isn't it, Mark? So if people have particular topics they want to learn about, then there are a few other sessions available. But yeah, my name's Greg. I'm Director of Marketing at Creavai, and I'm joined today by my colleague Jack, who's a Senior Solutions Consultant, so sort of on the technical side. And as Mark said, we're going to be discussing speech analytics, the power of speech analytics, how that informs quality management programs, and of course wrapping that all up with AI and showing you some pretty clever stuff that we've seen directly impact contact centers performance and actual business outcomes within organizations. So firstly, a little on Creavai. We're a leader in intelligence and guidance technology for contact centers. We just play in the contact center and other departments, but predominantly in the contact center. And that means that we analyze the customer conversations that are taking place. And as Mark alluded to, we do that across channel, right? So whether it's phone or email, chat, we can suck all of that data in and analyze it and look for the insights that can then inform decision making, process improvement, or in our case, on the guidance side, inform agent behavior and how agents react and deliver customer conversations. The impact for the contact center is improvement in KPIs, better average handle time, better first contact resolution, improvements in NPS. But from a business perspective, it's really around improving customer churn, that satisfaction levels, cost reduction. So yeah, we're going to be diving into that, those topics today. And when I think about speech analytics, I really think of that as the sort of the insights or intelligence engine that powers functions like quality management. We think that those out there automating this type of technology is still pretty low, maybe a third of all organizations. So there's a huge gap in those that are and aren't automating this technology. And today we're going to be running through how the use of speech analytics, right? Analyzing all of those interactions, gaining those insights, and I'll let Jack. I won't steal Jack's thunder in terms of some of the insights that you're going to get. But how do you use those to improve the decisions you make? As I say, change the processes, guide the agents, all of that good stuff. And when I think about this topic, the thing I really remember, and what strikes me whenever I speak to a business leader or a contact center leader, is how much manual work is still being done, right? How little the amount of interactions are being assessed, and then how manual and resource intensive the processes are that surround that say it's a quality management program. And so again, automation, cost reduction, they go hand in hand. And we'll really dig into that today and show you, just how deep the insights are, and far, ranging. People throw around the word game changer far too freely these days, but we've seen the stark difference between organizations that are looking at 100% of their interactions and those that are manually assessing 2, 5, 8% of them, right? You're missing a huge amount of information, a huge amount of data. But yeah, as I say, we're CareerVi. We're here today with Mark and NSL, a great partner of ours. Looking forward to a good session. Feel free to, jump in with the Q&A with any questions you've got, and we'll do our best to answer them. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jack, who's going to start exploring some of the powerful insights you can get from working with speech analytics.
Brilliant. Thanks, Greg. So yeah, guys, just to reiterate that, please jump in, type into chat, ask any questions you want throughout, and let's make it as engaging a session as possible. So I'm going to share out my screen, and we are going to jump right into the thick of it. So our demo system is set up with almost like a real life contact center setup. Tens of thousands of interactions are in there already processed, and I'm going to show you how you can use a system like this to pull out the insights, both for the quality management, using things like the agent experience and customer experience to really improve your contact center overall. Brilliant. So you should see that screen coming through now. So our solution, as Greg and Mark have sort of hinted at, this is giving you the 100% automated at scale look at everything that's going on in that contact center. So whether that's majority phone calls, or even if you're doing majority things like digital interactions, chats, cases, emails, we give you the capability of ingesting and analyzing up to 100% of those automatically. So we've got an automated feed into most contact center platforms that will enable that automated data push. Data comes in, audio calls are transcribed, and then from those transcriptions or the pure text of emails and chats, we analyze every single conversation holistically from start to finish and pull out all of the key insights that you care about for your kind of KPIs. System, as you can probably tell from what I'm showing on the screen now, also allows for full dashboarding and reporting. So the dashboard I've chosen to show today is a bit of a smorgasbord, shows a bit of everything, but I think it gets a really good representation across for all of the key constituent pieces of speech analytics or interaction analytics, and how things like reason for contact identification plays into your agent experience and plays into that customer experience and can be used to drive improvement. So this dashboard, as I say, it's a generic contact center manager in the service department, and I'm looking specifically at my sort of team 1 performance. So this is my dashboard. There are many like it. This one is mine. Dashboards are very easy to set up and duplicate and copy across. So very easy using filters to create one set of dashboards and have a view of, for example, your team 1's performance. Or if we show it down below, you could have almost like multiple teams within a group, your department, however you need this to set up is very easy and intuitive. But I can see broadly, starting at the top, I can see my top line KPIs. So my call volumes or interaction volumes across the date range that I've got selected here, got almost 5,000 interactions. We're actually down 14.6% from last month as well. So these delta averages, these are actually applicable, as you can see, to every kind of KPI and report that you build. Really That's a common theme we'll be seeing a lot is, are we seeing changes? Are we seeing a good change? Are we seeing a bad change? And what can we do about that and take action where we are seeing that? So 5,000 interactions, the system is going to give us some information right out the gate. So how many of those interactions were quote unquote easy? Or maybe a better way of saying it is, how many of them were very low effort, a positive experience for the customer, and we didn't see effort flags like repeat contact markers, dragged out average handle time, or negative levels of sentiment or frustration. What kind of calls did we see were difficult? Calls that, were creeping up a bit, where that first call resolution maybe wasn't hit. Maybe that average handle time dragged out, or the customer started to get annoyed. We can see looks at the agent and customer sentiment. In this case, we're looking broadly at our entire agent sentiment. We can see our average QA score for our entire team one, the average score on any manual evaluations or spot checks that we've done, our average handle time. And the thing I really want to touch on as well is our CSAT AI, which is our patented measure to actually automate a predictive post-call survey score. So without the need for customers to actually fill out a manual survey, you can get automated feedback as to how your actual agents are handling those interactions. Not based purely on sentiment. A customer could call up very annoyed, but are we still giving them a good service? That's the kind of interaction that this is showing here. I'm going to skip past team performance and show a little on that what I mentioned before around sort of reasons for contact identification and where we're seeing some interesting bits of data from the analytics. Complaints and escalations. We call this almost churn risk. Everything here can be customized and tailored, but we call it out of the box sort of churn risk. That's when we're seeing calls that are so difficult, calls that are causing such amounts of high customer effort, we're at risk of churning that customer. And this does not have to be built off something as basic as saying the customer saying, "Oh, I'm going to leave you." It's a whole host of factors that play into our effort, automated effort scores. We're able to see that our complaint and escalation rate is actually in the green. So this gauge chart can show that, yeah, we are seeing a few complaints, but nothing to worry about above average. But where we are seeing those, what are they about? Those sort of churn risk and complaints, we can start to break those down into buckets. So our system can pull out these kind of categories, we call them, from your data. So when people are mentioning things like legal threats or perhaps police threats, or if I scroll down below to things like contact drivers, what are they actually contacting us about? Order tracking, new order, shipping issues, these are all pulled from the data itself. So this gets away immediately from the agent experience of having to manually select perhaps a single disposition that might not be flexible enough to truly reflect what that interaction was about. Our categories can automatically flag and bucket these interactions into these KPIs and let you immediately see what people are actually calling about. All of these reports as well on this dashboard can be drilled down into. So for any time if you do want to get to the underlying data, if I click there, for example, I can go in and say, let's look at every call about an order tracking or a new order. And that will actually filter those down for me so we can see the 746 interactions where that particular sort of reason for contact was mentioned. I'm going to roll back up to our dashboard view above though and focus here a bit more on our contact drivers. So contact driver really underpins a lot of the things around agent experience and say the quality management piece, because we can start to cross combine these pieces with the automated QA module we can put into the tool to show, are there particular areas that agents might be weak in, areas that agents could use coaching on and further development, maybe an area that the entire team could use some additional work on as well. Preempting this, unnecessary calls. So what kind of level of unnecessary interactions are we getting in the contact center? We can judge that out of the box with things like where we've seen transfers and misdirected interactions, repeat contacts, people not getting that first call resolution they're looking for, not getting that satisfied outcome, where they're having to switch from a self-service channel to actually speaking to someone, or where they've had to be called back. That's about a 44% rate, which is not where we want to be. And we can drill further into that by cross-combining this unnecessary call driver with the repeat contact drivers we saw before. So where we're seeing both the repeat contact and a contact driver, we can see that repeat contacts, almost all of them are calling about online banking. So online banking is an area that our agents are struggling with. And that is an area that they could definitely use some coaching on. And by putting in things like your agent's FTE salary, you can start to see what that is actually costing you in real business terms, and see that making an improvement on the online banking line could really save a lot of cash. And this is just month on month. So how do we then judge agent performance? Agent performance is essentially scored in a number of ways using both the automated speech analytics that you saw above, as well as the quality assurance module that we have within the platform. So our quality assurance module allows you to build and replicate, an existing, maybe current manual QA scorecard process, or inherently adapt your automated scorecarding tool that you might have at the moment into a tool that's going to give you QA scoring across 100% of your interactions. So we can see our average QA score is 85.4% out of 100, and it's actually gone up 7% from the last 4 weeks. Our goal is 80% there. So we're well over target and getting better, but the system can automatically alert you to these kind of key areas. And I'll touch on that more later, but if a score goal, like we see there, dips below that 80% flag, we can set up automated alerts, emails from the platform to immediately let you know what's going on. And now we've got a team scorecard. So say we've replicated a QA scorecard, and this is now being applied to every single interaction that our agents are taking. This is completely customizable. So in our case here, we have a top line QA score with 5 key elements of the interaction being broken down from the initial introduction and connection through to ID and verification through to call resolution. Now you can tailor this with coloring, but out of the box RAG coloring lets you see immediately where problem areas are lying. Overall, our agents are averaging pretty high, but you can immediately see there's a problem with someone like Johnny Velasquez there. Even though his score is up 5% from the last month, we can see he's in the yellow, and there's 2 key areas that are dragging him down. Verification, which is definitely not unique to him. We do have Carolyn there, but those 2 are outliers in that particular area. That's a concern. The verification section is our main compliance statement. So if these agents aren't doing that, that's opening us up to potential risk, potential fraud, and there's something we need to do about that straight away. So these 2 agents could use some targeted coaching, but we can definitely see overall there's an issue with the entire team in this particular section. The resolution, we're not seeing the customer satisfaction rates we want. Agents aren't asking if there's anything else that they can do for our customers, and that's something we need to look at in further. We can also take a broader look at things like agent behavior, taking into account a lot of the things that we see around silence time, speaker dominance, sentiment, and also see is that having an impact on things like AHT and other behaviors and KPIs we want to look at. We can see the number of interactions we have total, the number of times these behaviors like transferring, saying that they are powerless to help or they're confused. We can see the impact that immediately has on our average handle time. Is it driving that average handle time up or down? And is it driving the average silence time up or down as well? Now, as I say, this dashboard gives us a bit of a look at everything. If I wanted to go deeper into a particular area, I might have a separate set of dashboards to go into that. And that's what I'm going to show you now. If I go back home, I can go into any of the dashboards that I have available to me for a specific sort of use case. Within reduced cost, we have our Agent RX and Cost RX, and I'm going to go deeper into my agent level. So that's our Auto QA module. So as a manager, I might want a deeper dive look at that QA scorecard I saw before, being able to see again that QA score trend over time, that same average QA score, everyone who passed, needs improvement or fail, how my team is performing against other teams in the building. So if we do want that sort of anonymous team comparison, that's something you can have in, as well as that, again, QA scorecard by agent on a deeper level. As you saw, we can actually drill into any one of these KPIs to see the underlying interactions. Just for today, I've got one already open in the other tab. So if I were to go in and see someone like Johnny's interactions themselves and have a review, it will look a lot like this. So whether it's a phone call, or a digital interaction, every single interaction has an individual data record in the system, which you can drill down to, and this informs the granularity of all of the data and insights you're getting. If it is an audio file, we actually keep a copy of that recording, and we can see every single key moment, ranging from the agent's introduction and the kind of QA elements that they've hit, to down to reasons for contact for the customer there. The system is going to give me an AI summary of every interaction as well. I can actually see at a glance what happened on the call. I can see how the automated QA score was achieved for this interaction. And I can see things like CSAT AI, the overall sentiment of both agent and customer, and any other kind of data about the interaction that I might bring in from my telephony or elsewhere. This QA score was 100 out of 100. So if I go to my scores tab, we can see the same QA scorecard that we saw on the dashboards now on an individual data level. 100 out of 100, if I click into this, allows me to see how we've set this up. So the system lets you build these scorecards and essentially drag and drop these category beats into them. So you define what you say is an acceptable greeting, a kind of acceptable verification process, and the system will then be able to let you drag and drop these in to build your scorecard out. So for connection, we want to see all three of these behaviors: agent name, offer assistance, and hello. Verification, in this case, we need to get a piece of identification information. We got one match, and that's actually given them the full 20 points because we can do weighted scoring as well as auto fail criteria and conditional scoring to make sure that things are being done, for example, in the proper order. So in this case, we've got an issue resolution at the end where we're looking for something the agent asks, and followed by that customer statement. So did the customer say that they feel like their issue's been resolved? How that looks on the actual transcript is shown here. So the AI is going to break down into our chapter by chapter play, where I can see the greeting and intro, followed by the customer issue and account verification. The agent said, "Thank you for calling." And we can see that that's been underlined. And if I hover over it, it shows us that that is the greeting hit. They've got the introduction of their name and the "How can I help today?" Below, we can see two additional categories, not around QA. These are reasons for contact being flagged up and hit against the customer's statement there that they've got a blocked card that's denied or declined. And they are very confused. And you can also see there the red negative emotion and green the positive emotion being detected, which all feed up into the sentiment scores we're seeing on the top right. So how do you actually build it and make it work? Well, these kind of categories, we've got well over 1,000 of them in the library ready to go. And that we say that these will get our customers anywhere from 50, 60, 70, 80% of the way there. These range across a huge variety of use cases and industries, but the system lets you build and configure these categories very, very easily and also allows you to learn from your own data. And the example I always give here is, let's say, "Thank you for calling." That's our standard greeting. I don't want that to apply to my business. My agents need to come in and say, "Thank you for calling Creavai," or "Thank you for calling NSL." They've got to include the company name in there. I can take our existing greeting pack and I can teach it to include that entire phrase. So the Heather Credit Union has been identified by the system as an entity name. That's a company name. All I have to do is highlight that phrase and add that phrase to my category. I can see that there is my STQA greeting category, and I'm going to give that essentially a thumbs up for relevant or a thumbs down for not relevant. And that's essentially teaching the system, this is good and this is bad for your auto scoring. I'm going to add that phrase. And now that has been re-identified, I can reprocess this call and it will rescore it for me. I can do that on the interaction itself, or I can do it at a batch scale. So if I make a quick couple of changes to my categories at large, reprocessing them will update all of those scores. So we can review the entire call, and this sort of view makes it very quick and easy to go about that. I can see and jump to any particular point in the call, all the way to the end where we can see that issue resolution and gratitude. And this kind of view does make it really quick and easy to come in and do those manual spot checks where you need it. But for the automated piece, that's where I'm going to leave that now, because where I want to go is show you how the system can flag these kind of areas to you where you might need to do spot checks and how we can do things like manual reviews and coaching. So the next layer to the automated piece is, for example, what we call subjective scoring. So a slightly different dashboard view. But what this is going to do is allow me to see immediately where I need to take action. So 29 interactions have been flagged to me as a manager that need review. Now, in this dashboard view, it's because they've simply scored low on their QA scorecard. In your system, that could be based on any criteria that you like. Maybe that's customer sentiment dipping below a certain average. Maybe that's profanity being mentioned. Maybe that's customer vulnerability. For any flag that you care about, the system will bring in and alert you to these kind of evaluations. And from here, I can go in and open one of those up. So if I wanted to go in and see, for example, Randy's call, I can come in, get that same view. And what I want to do with that really low QA score is come in and see what's gone on and score him on a manual basis. So this evaluation tab will actually let me do that because I can now get this side-by-side view of the entire call with the AI summary, with all of the greeting and text. And it enables me to do this sort of spot check where I can go in and actually manually score them. So call opening, I can say, did the agent do that greeting? Did they greet the customer by name? Did they follow correct process? And this is a separate scorecard that can be built for those more subjective elements. Things like, did they match tone? Did they match sort of the overall pace? Did they control the conversation? Did they follow process in perhaps other systems that we can't look at from a voice or speech analytics point of view? We can then grade all of that, and that can give a separate score which rolls up into their agent's overall score. So I can, for example, give coaching tips. If I fill out all of my questions, I can submit this. And we can see that that is given the agent a 53%, even though their automated score is at 40. So the agents can view this as well. So if we're feeding this information back to the agent, I might want to go and look at that from a different dashboard. So if I wanted to, say, roll this up to our one-to-one, the agent has a one-to-one dashboard view, which they can have either through logging into the system, or this is something that can be automatically pushed out to the agent as an image report via an email scheduler. So we're looking at Michelle, and she can see the number of interactions that she's taken, how she's performing in the basics of the eye connection and verification, whether she's having a positive impact on customer satisfaction and sentiment, or whether she's actually having a negative impact. And she can see on her QA scorecard her own individual scores, as well as how she's performed in any sort of manual evaluations that we've done. Bringing this back to, again, the broader concept of speech analytics and the reasons for contact we looked at earlier, this is great for driving improvement, spotting areas that need coaching, and enabling agents to do self-coaching. Opportunities shows me the top contact reasons that this agent has real difficulty handling. So again, looking back at those effort-creating behaviors that we identified, where we're seeing behaviors like powerlessness to help being mentioned, or I'm confused, or I'm going to have to transfer you because I don't know how to handle this. This is above my pay grade. Those kind of things we can see are way above average for Michelle, but they're not on every line. There are particular call drivers that Michelle struggles with, the refund or credit inquiry calls and the refund or credit status calls, where those things are being mentioned by the customer. We expect to see these shoot up. And vice versa, if we did want to use, and again, praise Michelle for the things she's doing well, postponed service calls or check balance or next service, these are calls that she's handling really easily. And the effort reducing behaviors really reflect that. So she's being a brand advocate. She's really being an advocate for both the brand and the customer. She's setting expectations, she's asking probing questions and doing good proactive guidance throughout the entire call. So this kind of look can give you a real insight as to where your agents are doing well and where they could definitely use some assistance. Maybe it's training on particular elements of the scorecard. Maybe it's product and process training for a particular type of interaction that they might be taking. Cool. Now, bringing this all back around, so we've had both the automated scoring, we've gone in and looked at a manual spot check call and scored them manually as well. The last piece that wraps this up is the coaching module, because this is where we can actually use the system to feed all of the information we've gotten back to the agent. Coaching is a module that's accessed by a particular user role. So I can come in and see that as a coach, I've got a few agents I need to go in and look at. So within my team, I could go in and look for any one of my agents. What I'm going to do is open up Kelly Tip. And I can see a sort of overview for that agent, including the number of coaching sessions that we've completed in the last 90 days. I can see all of the goals that we've set for her, whether she's on or off track for each one of those, and the number of goals she's actually completed in the last 90 days. Now, if I wanted to set up a new coaching session with Kelly, I could either do that from a new session at the top right, or if there was a particular interaction that I wanted to bring in and say to Kelly, this is something we need to talk about for good or bad, I can actually do that right from this interaction view. So I can go up to the top here and click Add to Coaching Session. I could even link that manual QA scorecard that I did to the session to review. And maybe I want to create an existing session or create a brand new one. That's what I'll do today. So I'll say our new session name is Call Review 1-to-1. And you can see there we get that little toast notification saying that that's been set up. So if I go back to my coaching piece here, let's give that a refresh. We should have a new draft coaching session available in our drafts. And in here, I can now feed all this information back to Kelly. So I've got public notes, which I can go in and give notes that are visible to both myself, the agent, and any other coach on the tool. I can have my own internal notes that are purely private and only visible to coaches. And I can also see that automatically we've had two things linked in this session. So that particular interaction enables me to drill back to that first call, as well as the evaluation layer as well. Now, based on what we've seen, so let's say Kelly's got some issues around compliance. So this is something we need to work on. I can say, put that in my notes, compliance, not always hit. But using the goals section, I can actually add a actionable goal for the agent to achieve based on the insight that I'm seeing. If I click add goals, I can either choose from an existing goal in my library. So for example, onboarding a brand new agent, there's a few basic steps we need to go through. I might select those. Or if it's a existing tenured agent who needs some additional work or retraining, I might choose, for example, compliance training, or I could create a brand new goal. Now, these can be linked back to your own training materials and own documents. So if there's, for example, training material that you need the agent to watch and acknowledge based on these goals, these can be linked in, and you can request that the agent actually acknowledges the session and actually goes and does that training before they come back and say that they've actually achieved it. So I've added that training goal. I can set a status to it. So if this is something that we're coming back to week on week, they might be not started at the moment. Come back next week, they could be on track, off track. Or if I think that they've mastered it after a few sessions, I might mark that as complete. So these goals are consistent throughout all of the training sessions with that agent. And all I have to do is say, right, you're on track. Let's review that next week, and we'll mark that session as complete. So once that's done, I can share this session out, and that's where I can send it straight to Kelly. So Kelly will get a report like this in her inbox. I can also email it out to other people in the tool, and I can request that the agent actually acknowledges that. So that will mean that you will have to get that response from the agent to say, yes, I've acknowledged the coaching session and I've gone and done the training before you come back next week. And I can just save and share that out. So, just take a pause there and say, that's a good point to give you this full 360 QM and speech analytics. Are there any questions from the group so far?
I'd probably just add quickly, conscious that there was a lot to take in, right? And the you know, obviously this is Jack's demo system that he's tinkered with, and we have people who use all different elements of that system, right?
So we had a question that was through from Ian regarding the recording. So yes, the recording will be shared with everyone who has attended, and it will also be uploaded onto the NSL webinar website. So anyone was able to access that. Couple of questions. So the CSAT side of it, Jack, you were saying that all of this information gets pulled through to CSAT. Every call is analyzed, because I think the industry trend is somewhere around about 5%, 8%, somewhere around there of people that actually go, yeah, okay, fine, I'll take part in some kind of a survey.
Yeah, and that's exactly the problem we're trying to address with the CSAT, because not only is it a very low uptake of post-call surveys or post-call reviews, Stephen?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Oh, let's mute Steve.
Yeah, I'm listening to.
Oh, just in time.
Yeah,
Just
he's
in
muted
time.
himself now. Brilliant, gotta love it.
Yeah. He's listening to the best presentation of all time. But the
Yeah, we
CSAT
should let
AI,
it go.
the CSAT AI is exactly that. So people very low uptake on surveys. Also, it tends to be emotionally driven, which means you're seeing the absolute best or occasionally absolute worst of people's responses. So with CSAT AI, we actually took and collated those responses on a mass scale and used that to train a predictive analytics model. So say across all of your interactions now, you're getting a post-call survey which is built and scored by a predictive model. And we've seen anything from like 95 to 97% accuracy being reported by the customers using it, because it is trained on that customer survey data and is very, very good at picking up satisfaction. And again, separate to sentiment. We don't care if the customer sentiment is very, very negative at the start and maybe positive at the end, but we care, are they getting that good, satisfied call outcome? Are we actually achieving what the customer needs from us in the time frame that they need it? So CSAT AI is broadly good, broadly neutral, as we would expect, but we can then start to break that down by team and start to identify, again, outliers, areas that we can take action on. Are there particular agents who might be real bottom performers in that sort of DSAT or dissatisfaction score? What is doing Michael Mann a disservice, because he's leaving almost 50% of his customers dissatisfied compared to Laurie, who's at 42? And why can't we be like Sarah Singleton or Patrick Cross, who are leaving over 50% of their customers at a satisfied rate? Drilling this back into things like, again, reasons for contact or product analytics. Across dissatisfaction, across dissatisfied calls and customers, what kind of contact reasons are driving that? People saying that there was an account payment on their account that they didn't authorize, or they made a service request and it wasn't fulfilled and no one showed up. Particular products might be driving dissatisfaction at a much higher rate as well. And these kind of crumbs can then be drilled into. So if there was a particular product that was driving that dissatisfaction, let's go into that. Let's look at it further. So my goods and my customer service line, I want to drill into those products. So we can see we're getting a lot of negative customer sentiment. There's a lot of reasons behind that negative sentiment, and that can range from, product specs being not up to par. There's a wiring issue that we've detected. There's features not working, and that's happening across multiple products of ours, but specifically smart home. If I wanted to drill further into smart home, let's see what the customers are actually saying about it. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of repeat contacts. There's a lot of frustration. And there's a lot of issues that we're seeing appearing again and again. Again, all of these are being automatically flagged and pulled out of the data, and cross-combining that reason for contact with the QA and the other elements of the tool lets you really see where that problem areas lie and how you can get into it.
Good one. And I think that's worth saying, that that's a really simple and common use case, is people not being aware of issues when they arrive, either quick enough or ever, right? And there's, again, we can share some stories, but you can have huge spikes in calls and not understand, what has driven that spike in calls. And this obviously you can set up again the same sort of alerts and stuff to immediately bring it to attention.
So Greg, you were mentioning spikes in calls. So I mean, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about you've got California with the fires, you got Florida had the flooding, you've got the flooding that happened in Spain. So there are going to be elements that have taken place in the UK as well for customers that we look after. So we might be looking at train strikes, we might be looking at kind of weather issues where there's half an inch of snow on the roads and people can't get anywhere. So it's understanding those trends and how they've impacted the volume of calls that are coming in, and how the team are managing those. Are they competent in managing those, and are there any new topics that are coming up?
Yeah, I think, so yeah, just to take your example a little further, say there's too much snow, you couldn't get to a venue for a gig, but the gig hadn't been cancelled, and therefore you want a refund, you're going to have a huge spike in calls, or think you're going to get a huge spike in calls. And I think that's really the secret is you can either plan retrospectively from what you're seeing, or you can plan if there's obviously acts of God. You can proactively think about how you're going to manage that scenario, how you're going to resource it, and all those sorts of things. Obviously, they're decisions that you're going to make. But back to we're talking about business outcomes. This gives you the insight to do that. It also, in the reverse context, gives you the insight to stand people down when you're almost through the worst of it, or you're through that spike. You can be like, oh, we don't need to keep 50 people on this for the next few days. We can reallocate them back to their normal services, because of course very few contact centers in my experience are flexible enough to move people to in too much of a fashion, right? You might be able to, or you might have an outsource or something that when you have a problem you can spin it up. But it works both ways. It works in if you know something's coming and there's going to be a spike in calls because historically there has been, then you can plan for that. But also the data can then tell you we're through the worst, or we can start to stand people down.
Okay. And the other thing that we mentioned about being able to group members of the team for certain assessments. So I know we've been working on a project recently where they have a new member of the team that's come on board, and they'll have a certain assessment template that they'll follow. They'll then hit those markers and go, fantastic, I'm ready to rock and roll. I can now take on more responsibility. And you then transition them to a new assessment template. So I thought that was really interesting in that you can stage the team's development and mold those automated assessments accordingly.
And Jack alluded to it, right? It's some people might come off their training schedule of a few weeks and be flying in certain areas, and it's totally clicked. They get the process, and it really makes a lot of sense to them. But actually, they're letting themselves down on verification, or they're letting themselves down on wrap up, of the call and all that sort of stuff.
And the other one, sorry, Greg, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, and I think it really takes the bias out of QA, or I suppose more importantly, it takes the perceived bias out of it. Agents know that you're not having time to review every single one of their interactions. You don't have time, and you don't have time either, which leads to random spot checks, or listening to the longest calls, or just taking a sampling here and there. And we've heard it before. Agents say that was my worst call, or I'm not always like that. 99% of the times I do it. That might be true. You might have picked their worst call that day. Something like this will give you a completely unbiased, one-size-fits-all, look at that QA piece. And it's very easy to, if that pushback comes, to say, well, no, I can prove that did or didn't happen, because I can go straight from that top-line dashboard down to the transcript, right like that. And we're not talking, again, a individual drop in the ocean. This is at scale. This is about trend analytics. You can see that this isn't something that's popped up once or twice in thousands of interactions. It's something that's popped up a couple of 100 times and is trending down.
Guys, I'm just conscious of time, and you're kind of carrying on chatting away there. So can I just get some questions?
Of course, please.
Out. So first of all, how many firms use this in financial services, and over what period of time have you been using this particular system?
The system was invented in 2012, but obviously has continued to develop over that time frame. They, obviously shall we say, the leaps forward in AI in the last 2 years have then obviously significantly added features such as the summaries and the chapters and things like that, right? Which has significantly helped. Financial services are one of our major clients sectors, right? And within that, we've got a range of clients, banks, very popular credit unions, where obviously the member experience is so crucial. They don't want to lose members to other credit unions. Insurance, that's more because of how complex their calls are, right? They need to get to the crux of the insight and the data. And again, on the other side of the fence for us, on the guidance side, helping people just get through a complex set of parameters for that call is crucial. Numbers,
Okay,
hundreds, yeah.
That's fine, thanks. Tell me, what have you done in terms of identifying vulnerable customers?
So yeah, vulnerable customer detection is really important, especially for things like FCA breaches. So our system in the post-call world is ideally placed for that. We also have a real-time offering which can be used to identify those actually live on the interaction itself, and then send out the sort of alerts and next steps that you'd want to from there, Ian. So vulnerable customer detection will be built out some of the same ways I've shown you, but this is something that we have done for, let's say, the kind of financial services and corporate customers that we're working for, to look at those areas where people say things like, I can't pay my bill, I'm really struggling, or they've come down with an illness. The sort of typical flags you'd be look for, you can build those into the platform and get immediate reports back on it.
Okay, thank you. Does it use vocal biomarkers in any way, or is it purely on speech analytics?
Purely on speech to text analytics, yeah.
Okay. Is it phone system agnostic?
Completely. We only care about a recording of the audio file that can be sent to us.
So is the recording recorded by our recorder and sent to you? I thought this did the recording as well.
No, we don't operate as a telephony recording platform. We are push data from the telephony or recorder.
So just explain how that works. So what you have an API, so we have to build an API from our recorder to your system. I don't quite understand.
Sure. So let's take 8x8 as an example. For most of the contact center players in the market, we have dedicated API integrations already built up. We just need to configure it, make sure we're passing authentication, and then you can control that API push or data push. So if you want to send us 100% of your interactions immediately after they happen, go for it. If you want to send us 50% of our interactions the next day, that's fine as well. We can also be completely agnostic if we don't have an API. If it's a smaller player in the market, we can set up an SFTP as a sort of middle layer or an S3 bucket and do a secure transfer. But we do rely on those recordings of the original interactions, or those records or digital interaction cases as well.
Okay, because we've got a Mitel system, and we've got what they call Powerball as a call recorder. I don't know if that's something you're familiar with.
Yeah, we come across that.
Okay, how much of it is preset? So how do you get going as a business with this? So in the sense, is there a certain amount out the box and then you start to refine it with your individual, or is there a big kind of journey of discovery that you go on?
I'd say 50% of one, 50% of the other. There is a definite need and the real importance for the sort of PS and scoping on our side for customers to go live, to really make sure that we're tailoring the system for them as much as possible. But we do have a huge amount of what we call out of the box. So every dashboard you've seen today comes out of the box. These are what we call pre-built accelerators. All of the pre-built categories that do cover, those pan-industry use cases, from QA to contact driver recognition to, sentiment, effort flags, things that, again, pan-industry, those are ready to go and out of the box. We come in, make sure things like your QA scorecard is built and in scoring accurately. Make sure that that transition from manual to automated is as smooth as possible, and help you on training you up to build the system yourself.
Yeah, I think there are 1,200 categories, right? So there is a process. It's not a detailed one, but we have to go through and to pick. You don't want 1,200 categories, obviously, on your dashboard. So we again, by industry, customers typically tend to take the same batch, and then there'll be a sway of X% in terms of their specific business and the way they take interactions in.
Okie dokie. So we're a broker, so that means that we're dealing with several different insurance products. We then have we would then sell from a panel of insurance companies. So each insurance company would have certain scriptings which are dedicated to them. The calls might be a customer service call, it might be a sales call, or just a quote call. How does the system differentiate between what type of call? It could be inbound, it could be outbound. And we do a lot of outbound calling on internet leads, for example. So how does it work out what type of call it is, and then which QA scorecard it uses?
I mean, yeah, Ian, it's good because you're really or thinking ahead, really, because that's what the system can do. Based on things like metadata, it can apply different scorecards, different use cases to make sure that you're accurately reflecting this kind of structure you've got at the moment. So this interaction I have on the screen is Tether demo, but it's from our pseudo credit union within our demo platform, and the agent is Kelly. All of this information and all of the interaction details there, where we can see direction inbound, customer ID, that's what we call metadata, or data about the interaction. And that's typically passed to us from the recording platform or the telephony platform. So that is absolutely essential. And this is actually mandatory. Every audio file or case has to come with metadata that we can use to bring in and flag it as such. And there's no limit to the amount of fields you can bring in for analytics, but we can filter and analyze by any of the lines that you're seeing there: date, time, direction, agent name.
Yeah, I'm not sure that helps me, because we could be making an outbound call on a customer inquiry. So a lead comes in on the internet. So we know the product area that they're interested in. We make an outbound call, or they make a call inbound on a certain number. But we won't know what we're necessarily going to recommend until we talk to them, and then we won't know which insurance company and product we will recommend. So how does it? That won't, there will only be kind of very basic metadata in there, and it could. So, for instance, we might have a lead for life insurance, and it actually once we talk to the customer, we end up saying, actually, it's health insurance that we'd recommend for you, and then we go on to which particular insurance company and product. So. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? I'm
do.
Trying to work out how it's going to cope with that level of complexity.
Yeah, so I'd say there's two things we can do in that case. Don't want to veer too much into doing actual scoping on this call, but what we'd say is what we can run for we can run scorecards in parallel. So if you did have multiple scorecards, as you see there, you can have as many scorecards running in parallel as you wish. And then it would, from your use case there, Ian, it sounds unique, but I think what we'd have to do is identify by the voice analytics piece what we'd classify that call as. So being able to use the voice analytics itself to say, this is a blocked card call, or you say this is where a particular insurance has been mentioned. That means we have to follow this scorecard as opposed to scorecard B.
Okay, so if the agent effectively says, right, let's organize an application, it can then listen to that and then utilize the appropriate QA scorecard. And if he says, this application is with Aviva, we can have specific checks based on the Aviva scripts that we've placed into the system.
Yeah, I think the obvious there would be maybe a couple different scorecards. You could have a generic sales scorecard within that that particular insurance sector, and then you could we could then pick an Aviva one and have them running, right? If there are then parameters within the Aviva one that is different to the generic one, but also it's suggesting a different type of insurance, and of course you'll know this better than me. Is the process completely different? The steps they have to go through, but is there still the sentiment and the how whether they take it or not, and whether it's resolved, is that the same, right? So it depends how detailed you go into the area of that insurance, and if you particular provider, right? So if you really do, then yeah, you will need to, I think, run those multiple.
Okay, thanks very much, guys.
No, cheers.
Ian,
Good questions.
Thank you for your questions there. Just so that you're aware, in certain circumstances, we're able to build a POV for certain projects. And as you've said, you're already recording calls. So we may be able to grab a selection of those calls and build a template around that to show you how the platform would be able to interact and what kind of value it could bring. So if that's something you'd like to explore, happy to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, great. I will come back to you. Really interesting, really engaging. Thanks, guys. Sorry, I've got to drop off and get to the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock now. So
brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Well, that was some interesting questions from me in there. Does anybody else have any other questions? Because obviously that was specific around the insurance and finance world.
It's up to 9.
Hello, Annie.
Hi, can you just help me understand how the system identifies a difficult call from an easy call? What's the differentiator?
Yeah, great question, Annie. So just off the mark, those easy and difficult flags are just our own internal labeling. So you can call those whatever you like, but on a interaction itself, we have this piece here called the effort index. And the effort index is, again, another predictive measure that picks up a multiple number of factors, ranging from the sentiment, the silence time, speaker dominance, and seeing actual, quote unquote, what we call effort flags. So, for example, confusion as an effort flag, or other markers such as I've been waiting so long for this, or effort flags is like company communications. I've gotten those twice. And it rolls them up all into a single model, and it produces a score out of 10, 10 being really easy, and 0, of course, being absolutely difficult. So on that sort of range, we're able to bucket those calls into as many groups as you like. We've gone for easy, difficult, and so difficult we're seeing actual churn risks like that. So that's a predictive model there that we call the effort index. Annie.
Thank you. I just wondered how that would work for us being a bereavement industry, because obviously there are going to be lots of silences and there's going to be lots of those sort of confusion, I guess, on the call, so to speak. So it was really quite interesting to see how that would work. Thank you.
No, completely. And I think that's why I think those easy, difficult flags can be misleading. It's not a fixed set. It's a score from 1 to 10. And every industry, like you say, with vulnerability or bereavement, is going to have much different call acoustics and call dynamics than others. So we're just giving you a score, and what you grade as maybe a very difficult one or a very easy one might be something that needs tailoring to you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Chat.
Pleasure.
Great. Thanks, Annie. Anyone else have any questions as we're coming towards the end of the webinar itself? No? Brilliant. Well, I want to say thank you again to everybody for attending and for the questions that have been asked. And thank you to Greg and Jack for taking the time to share about Creavai and the speech analytics and quality management product. And yeah, look forward to seeing everybody that signs up for the next webinar in February.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mark.